Hey everyone, this is our third episode of the Tokenomics podcast, and today we'd like to talk about why do we need tokenomics? And the idea comes from us, the Tokenomics DAO. We created this initiative, and um, we're not a DAO. We don't have a token yet. It's kind of all on the agenda, and so today we really want to take you guys through our thought process of why it might make sense to have a token and what a token might do for us as a community. So yeah, that's kind of the theme of today's podcast that we're recording. Um, yeah, so I guess like I've I've just published an article, and I'll link that in the show notes. And the article is pretty much about like this intro thing, right? I'm saying we have a community with like up to almost 500 people now, and there's people that are getting involved and getting engaged. They're interested in contributing, but somehow we're not really a DAO yet. We're still sort of centralized, and we don't have a token, right? So none of us is getting paid for anything of this. It's all it's all just a hobby at the moment. And we think like it would be a really cool thing to create something like a token, because I believe there's lots of benefits to it in having that token, like aligning the community and like creating this incentive system. And we talked about it in the last episode about the principal agent problem. And yeah, basically the idea was, or the theme was, that the more tokens or the more equity someone has, the more incentivized he is to work towards the common goal of the mission, and that could be the DAO, right? And so yeah, we want to go a little bit deeper and now really find out if going from this like abstract theoretical thing, looking into if we need one. Like, do we as the Tokenomics DAO really need that kind of token? So maybe we can look into the article that I've wrote and kind of go through that, because the idea for me with this is really I want to bring this up to everybody's attention and say like, hey, we're doing this for ourselves. So we're kind of we're eating our own dog food here as the Tokenomics DAO. We're trying to define our very own tokenomics and hope that really helps others to do that for their DAOs, for their projects as well. Because we're going to try to go through all of these questions, all the things that we come up. And ideally, I'd love this to be a community approach. So we're going to have a Discord channel for this project, defining the tokenomics of the Tokenomics DAO. We'll have a couple of events and meetings coming up, and we'd just like people to join and bring in their ideas and make this a community thing, a discussion. I don't want to define this on my own, and neither do I want to do this with Jason just alone. We want to kind of take you all on this journey to find this together. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. And the idea and all of this came from Lucas, and we talked about this in the last episode, where he said, he's talking about the Bankless DAO and what they achieved in their season 2, and he said like it's insane what a community can achieve when incentivized with ownership. And then in the last episode, we kind of drilled into that ownership theme, what that does to people joining, and kind of how that helps them to work towards a common goal and create all sorts of crazy, interesting stuff that potentially could be monetized in the future that others see valuable. So you give them these tokens and they kind of contribute their time and create really awesome stuff that adds value to the whole ecosystem, but also adds value to other members. So that was kind of the idea, and that's kind of the gist of this whole post. And then at the end, I list like a lot of questions, just went through like what I had in my mind about different questions we could ask. There's all sorts of different questions that we hope to be answering throughout this series of, well, maybe we'll do a couple of podcasts on it, series of articles, discussions in the community. So it's like things like, why do we need a token? This generic question, launching a token, a demand for a token? Like where does that come from? I've read a really interesting uh, blog post on supply of tokens, like how do you evaluate that? So there's so many different topics, I guess, to uncover. And yeah, we want to take our time and go through all of that. So there's some interesting questions in here. Maybe we can yeah, have a look at these while we go through that. And then what I'm also doing, I'm working on this second piece on like why do we need a token? So that's kind of the I'm going to take like this first chunk that we have defined, this first questions that we also want to discuss today, and I'm going through that. And to me, it's yeah, I've gone through it. I've done some research, and I can't find a lot of things that would speak against having a token because of just this ownership scheme, right? And I've looked into some definitions. It's really to some degree it's very similar to equities. So like you just you have shares and use them to raise money. That's a cool thing you could use a token for. And yeah, I mean it can be used for price determination, so you can trade it on the market, and that's also something that's a pretty good thing, right? So you can buy into that. But what it does additionally, and that's kind of what yeah, the thought process that I had is that it makes it a lot easier than shares in a corporation, right? So the average Joe, like the two of us, we can't participate in a lot of these pre-IPO things. We can't invest into that stuff, and it usually goes through a whole lot of investors. They get the opportunity to buy this stuff before we even get the chance to get into that. And an IPO process, I've never done one, but it seems to me that this is a major initiative to do. It costs a lot of money, a lot of planning, lots of things to do there. But with Web3, launching a token seems to be a lot easier to do, less friction. And I think that's the interesting part, why so many are doing it. I mean, there's lots of corporations that have issued shares, so why not have a lot of Web3 companies that issue tokens, right? So yeah,
Yeah, flow. And another thing is it's also so much more egalitarian, right? It allows the people to come in with nothing but, their time and their talent and their energy, which you don't need to be extremely rich to take part in that initial ramp up. You don't need to be very accredited. Um, yeah. So it
yeah,
does have benefits that better. That's not better, but I guess better, better than the traditional equity raise initial um, IPOs, right?
levels the playing field. Um,
Yeah.
lets everybody get involved, but also everybody give everybody the opportunity to launch one of their own. Of course, that will
Mm.
create a ton of tokens and a lot of confusion, and people will have to do their research and have to trust the projects. But yeah, I mean that's it's not different for shares, right? You're not going to just buy some shares. You'll have to look into that as well because a lot of people can do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yes, I guess maybe we can then start with we've talked about all these benefits, or at least a few, this ownership thing, and that you can raise capital. You can also raise time, obviously. Maybe we'll go to that a little bit later. But what would be like the things that would kind of speak against um, having a token? Because that's like my obvious question, like why we need a token. Let's maybe look into why we shouldn't have a token. Why shouldn't we as a community utilize this tool of a token to benefit from it?
Yeah. Uh, it's hard to come up with many. Um, yeah, it's hard to come up with many good reasons why not to have something like that. Uh, And I think it also depends on which perspective you're taking. Like if you're saying from a governance perspective, right, from a conventional business perspective, there's certain aspects that muddy the water a bit. Like, oh, so if it's not a private limited corporation, what if you're paying your customers or your shareholders or your stakeholders with these things that are not currency, like government fiat, how do we account for it? How do we put that on our balance sheet? Stuff like that. So there's that perspective. And then there's also the perspective of looking at it from the point of view of, hey, is this actually helpful to achieve these certain goals we have, right? For this organization? Does putting tokens into the mix help us achieve what we're trying to do, or does it hinder it and make it more confusing, you know?
What could that be? Like, just trying to think through that. What could be?
So for example, I'm just purely guessing here because I've never worked in the environment yet. But yeah, for example, if say, in this case, not employees, but collaborators, let's say, incentivized to do something to get a token, they might actually end up changing their behavior just to accumulate more of these tokens. And maybe it's not good um, for the worker or the creator, but just because they have that, they're incentivized to collect these tokens, they go ahead and exhibit behaviors that in the whole grand scheme of things might not be a net positive. You know, they might say, oh, I'll spend all my time, I see there's a loophole here, whoever I don't know, put in this, what would you call it, this smart contract or these rules, right, for these systems, there's a loophole there. If I just keep going for these courses, I'll keep accruing tokens. And even though I'm not interested in these courses, I can just turn it on and sit in the background, do something else, and keep getting tokens, right? There's the accountability comes in a traditional setting. You'd have that accountability. You'd be people will see, your colleagues will see what you're doing and go, hey, that person's not really contributing much, you know, and there's that peer pressure to do something different. But when you're just working in an autonomous mode and you see a loophole in the system, you could encourage bad behavior if such loopholes exist. But again, I'm just spitballing here. I'm just guessing, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, I like the learning example. Of course, somebody could do, if you had, I don't know, like a learn to earn model. Somebody would be incentivized to do your courses. But I mean, would that be different to university, right? Why do you do a university degree? Um, I think most people are motivated by having the degree to then make money with that. It's not, I guess, like, there's certainly some people, but most people wouldn't just be motivated purely by the content, because they could get the content for free nowadays. You could just
Mm-hmm.
um, go on the internet and learn about economics or math. You wouldn't need to sign up for uni and do tests and do all that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so incentive is clearly achieving this degree where, yeah, token could be like this. Clearly the incentive is receiving that token, and then the learning might not be as good. I don't know. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Um,
So I think
yeah.
overall, it's just really about how do you, if you want to put tokenomics into an organization, basically from the very big picture perspective, what you're doing is trying to say you're making things autonomous, you're making things work by itself, right? You set the structure in place, and then you allow things to happen according to that structure that you've built, right? That the rules that you've put in place. So it's important to, I guess, with tokenomics, it's not only about having a token good or not, but it's more granular and how is this token actually set up? Is it incentivized in a way that will help us to achieve what we're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
You know,
And
it's yeah, you have to go
yeah.
deep, I guess.
Yeah, and like case by case, not like probably not every project needs a token. I think
Yeah.
that's at least what I've seen in writing a lot of these articles was like that a lot of the projects they don't really require a token within their utility. They don't really require it to function, but they wanted to
Hmm.
use it as some sort of uh as some sort of funding mechanism to raise money basically. And then there's
Right.
this whole utility token, security tokens topic, that if you have a security token, then you sort of have SEC regulation in the United States, and it's not that easy to create. But if you have a utility token, that means it has some sort of governance discount, or it has some function in the product and then you can get away with that without it being a security as defined by the SEC. And I guess that's what a lot of protocols because of that have done, right? They've just created these things, given it some function. Maybe
Yeah.
in a lot of them it's just like governance, but you
Yeah.
don't really need it. So the actual reason why they've used the token in many cases, I guess, was just to raise money and raise time.
And get around that SEC
Yeah, and
regulatory
that's why they said
load.
it's a governance token, right? But it is
Yeah.
still it's like a share, like an equity, like most cases just used for raising money
Yeah.
and giving ownership, right? Yeah. So yeah, so to me, like I think there's a lot of things and that are beneficial through tokens. And I don't know, maybe the community will come up with reasons. I haven't found any good critics on why you shouldn't have a token. And I guess there's many different areas these tokens would be used, right? We as the Tokenomics DAO, we're not trying to build any protocol or piece of software as such where that token would be used in. So we purely see this as a social token, right? We see this as this ownership in this community content creating thing that we're building. And that's different than maybe, right? That's a different way of using. We don't have to embed it into the application because we don't have an application as such. We're just going to use it um, as way to raise time from contributors, and maybe we'll have other ideas as well.
Yeah. And the overarching thing is, yeah, if you could keep scrolling down to pull the collaborators and the creators towards being principals rather than agents, right? Which is what we were
Yeah,
going in depth about last time.
yeah.
Um,
So we've got this image open at the moment, and I mean, if you've looked into it, I had this arrow between agent and principal, and we said like as percentage of your net worth, the token holdings in a certain project define how much you move towards the principal side, i.e., if you're a principal, then you act towards the success of the project, right? Your self-interest is completely aligned with this project, and you don't need anybody to tell you to create value because that's your self-interest, because all your money is in these tokens. Whereas on the other side, if you're an agent and you hold 0 tokens as percentage of your net worth, and you're part of that project, then you just do, I don't know, whatever they tell you they're going to pay you for. Like in most corporations, like Jason last time we talked about the guy who repairs the car, right? He wouldn't be too interested in it. And I had this thing with rental cars, basically, right? If it's not your car, you're not going to take too good care of it. But if it's your own, you're going to be really careful. So your own self-interest is sort of aligned with the interest of the car, maybe. And
yeah,
so in a DAO or in a social structure, like a community, that could lead to better quality contributions. So on the one side, if people don't have any tokens, their contributions would be like, yeah, I'll say something here, I'll say something there, I'll half-ass an article, send that in. But the more tokens you have, the more ownership in this whole venture or initiative you have, to me at least, it seems that the better the quality of your contribution should get, right? You should write better articles if you get more tokens for it, if you already have a lot of tokens, and this article that you're writing then increases the value of this whole thing, you have a piece of ownership in.
Yeah.
And
Very cool diagram flow. I like it.
my
I like
diagram
the,
skills.
yeah,
Cool,
look at
cool.
those, the different
Humans.
colors of the contribution quality and the thickness of the contribution quality.
All the details, yeah.
I like.
uh, yeah, I don't know, I'm a diagram guy.
But
And
yeah, it's
so, yeah,
really also there's that aspect of how as human beings we make a lot of decisions also intuitively or emotionally, right? And doesn't make them wrong per se, but you tend to make these decisions, these quick decisions, very much more, let's say, holistically when when you're really invested. So just to give you a maybe a funny example, right? If I was to say, hey Flo, would you recommend your sister go out with this guy, right? You get a very quick, like, you don't need to write an essay on whether or not you would say yeah, yes or no, right? You're
and you can't
like,
explain it.
yeah, you can't
Yeah,
explain it.
yeah.
Yeah, but if I was to ask you, hey Flo, there's this girl that you don't really know that well that might want to go out with this guy that you don't really know that well. What do you think, right? And because you're not that invested, you go through this rationalization process, saying, oh yeah, they have similar hobbies, or they're about the same age. Yeah, okay, yeah, why not, right?
Yeah.
And I think in a business, it's hard to, or not, yeah, in an organization, it's hard to really put these things down onto paper. It's very hard to quantify it, right? Like when there's a group of motivated people that feel high ownership, get together to try and reach a goal, there are certain aspects to their decision making, to the way they collaborate, to the way they hack, right, solutions, the way they don't care if it's 9 p.m. at night, right? They'll just, maybe I'm romanticizing it too much, but from my experience working in a startup, right, I feel that I felt that very strongly. It was more like, hey, everybody's just so focused on the goal. There's nothing like, oh, what's my job scope, or what's this, what am I expected to do, or what, it's more like, hey, we need to get this thing done. How can I get it done, and
Yeah. And then,
um
yeah, everybody sort of joins in automatically without you having to tell them, right? Whereas on the corporate employee, big corp thing, you would kind of often hear people say, nah, that's not my area of responsibility, right? And
yeah.
they'd give you a pass on your request for help. Whereas if these incentives were better aligned, potentially via a token, they would probably just go out of their way to help you, right?
Hmm. I don't know if you've heard that saying where it's like, oh, let me see if I can get it right. Something like, oh, I just do enough so that I don't get fired,
Yeah.
and my boss will pay me just enough so that I don't leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like that, right? And
Makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, and how do you prevent an organization falling into that rut where you have hundreds or thousands of people going to work every day with that mentality?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's interesting. And I think that's, I mean, that's what I see. I've been seeing in this DAO landscape. People seem to be motivated by something else. Like it's almost like they they don't worry too much about the salary that they get paid, because maybe it's because they have this more long-term view, and so they pick the projects that they just see for themselves are really exciting. They join them and then they contribute. And and they don't like I said this a couple of times, they don't go into a DAO and negotiate a pay. They just go in and contribute and then see what they get paid for it. But because they're adding value, they see that the tokens that they own, or the stuff that they get for the contribution, will, through that value they are adding, also gain in value. And I think that's very similar to maybe startups, but it's like that you can join multiple startups at the same time, and it's much easier to leave them if you don't like the work anymore, if you don't align with the incentives anymore, right?
Yeah.
So you just go to Uniswap and sell your tokens, and then you're out of the startup. You don't have to quit your job formally and do all that, right? So like
Yeah.
you sell your tokens,
Or
you're not invested anymore, and then you do something else. Yeah.
yeah, or maybe you like what the tokens, like what that organization's goals are. You go in there,
Yeah.
you help it get, like, maybe you help it get from point A to point B, right? And then you realize that your skill set might not be um, that well aligned to getting it from point B to point C, but
Yeah.
you still believe in
Yeah.
what they're
Yeah.
doing, right?
Yeah.
So you get to keep those tokens,
Yeah.
but just, and then you get to see, okay, how does that play out going forward, right? But say,
Yeah.
like, replay this situation in a traditional environment. Let's say you're in a startup, you do something, you get it from point A to point B, right? You put everything you have into it to get it from point A to point B. Then you realize, oh, I'm not that good anymore in doing it, right? I'm not that good anymore trying to get this company from point B to point C. But I'm still hired by this company. I don't have any equity. I get paid a salary. And then you
Yeah.
go, oh, so I guess I'll just stick around because I still want to get my salary,
Yeah.
right? And you're not incentivized to say, hey, um, I'm no longer that efficient or effective in this space anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
leave, because you can't take that stake that you've built up with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I think that's a
so I
really
think
cool way to think about it. Yeah.
that's one aspect, because you walk around, you could have a whole career going around collecting hundreds of different tokens, right? Where you are always implanting yourself into an ecosystem. Just when you know your role, you know what you do best, you seek out those projects in that specific area, and then you do it, right? And then you are as effective as can be. And yeah, in a way, it's Adam Smith, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But like
Adam
unleashed,
Smith with
frictionless.
technology. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You don't have to be this guy for this company forever, because the company changes in its scope and in its maturity and its size.
Yeah.
But you are you, and you might not grow along with that company. And in this way, you're still a supporter of the company, even though you've left it, because you go, hey man, look at my wallet. I've got
Still
a
have the
huge chunk
tokens.
of your
Yeah.
tokens. Yeah. And I hope that
Yeah.
you do well. And you will
Yeah.
then also keep looking out at what this company is doing. And who knows, maybe 5 years down the road, you go, hey, now's the time again for me to jump back in.
Yeah.
I
I
think
got
they're
some
doing this
skills.
or that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're jumping in as a principal. You're not jumping in as an agent.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's super cool. I bet that's already happening. And in a lot of places right now, like in DAOs that have been created, and like token incentivized communities. But it's really cool to think about it that way. Yeah. Okay. So maybe let's look at, so I've kind of thought through this a little bit further, right? And then I tried to categorize this, and maybe in this case you don't really need a diagram for it, but I thought this would be a cool way to visualize this. So what I have in the middle of this is this token, and I'm trying to depict what benefits the token really brings. There's multiple things, and we talked about a whole bunch of them already, right? The token kind of allows you to raise money. I mean, you can, as a DAO, you could just create a token, doesn't cost anything, and you can sell it, right? So it's like the government printing $100 bill that only costs them a few cents, and they can then sell that or give that out, right? So it's like the seigniorage process. You can create these tokens, and you can benefits on what they give you. Same with shares. And then the other thing is, I like to call it raise time, or you could also call it like raising capital and raising human capital, right? So you're,
Intellectual capital, right?
or yeah, intellectual capital, yeah. And that's something
Yeah.
I see like that's that's a novelty, or that's kind of amplified through the whole process of having it um, in this loose Web3 environment, right? Because if you're in this startup environment, yes, if you work for a startup, you might get like a lot of equity paid as part of your salary. So they're kind of using their shares to raise your time. But you wouldn't do it in this like loose way where you work for multiple startups at the same time, and you could move between them kind of in a like in this frictionless environment. That's not, I don't really see that happening too much, right? But in DAOs or in the Web3 ecosystem, I definitely see that. Like people work for that DAO, they do something here, then they do a little bit there, they write an article for that, they write a piece of code for them, and in all of them they get their own native tokens, and they can choose, so that the party that paid them, they have raised time of this resource or intellectual capital, and then the person themselves, they can use that token to sell it, they can keep it if they believe in the future of the project. And so it brings this like whole dynamic mechanism. It's not completely new, but I think through this whole kind of freelance vibe, loosely coupled, it, yeah, it gets an own, really own, yeah, whole special benefit to it, I think.
Hmm.
um
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool because there's also this Venn. You could even have another diagram. There's like a Venn diagram where there are all these benefits, right? That and they all overlap. I guess traditionally, to raise time at the same time you raise money, it doesn't. It's not that easy normally. It's not that elegant, right?
yeah, because you have to
Um,
hire people in traditional. I,
yeah.
I don't think like, I don't know if this exists, but who knows, maybe there's freelancers who like purely work for startups and are happy to get only paid in equity. Not sure if that exists in
Mm.
the traditional world, but that's kind of how I see it sometimes in DAOs.
I don't think. I think just due to the regulatory framework, right? Like you're
Yeah,
German. You know the way things work in Germany. You know, when you're
yeah,
an employee, there's all these things. You know, you that the government needs you to fulfill.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's. I think there'd be a lot of friction for somebody to come in and say, "Hey, I'm a freelancer. And pay me in equity."
yeah.
You know, and
Would, yeah, yeah,
with tokens, that's all gone. It's just
yeah,
straight away. No middleman, right? Coming in
yeah, yeah.
between.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see how they regulate it. This new tool that we have.
And in a way, they can't really regulate it. They can regulate the off ramps, right? They can't
Yes, yeah,
regulate the way you organize yourselves with different people,
yeah, yeah,
um, and
yeah,
how people choose to work with their time on certain projects. They can't regulate that.
yeah,
So it's super crazy when you think about it. Like it's revolutionary, even, right? You've got people all across the globe now able to work with each other, incentivized to work with each other with no centralized authority really being able to influence that in the way that they have always been able to, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like especially this like cross-border thing. I mean, we know this very well because we've worked in different countries, um, and worked, yeah, pretty much like in these global setups. And to me, in a corporate world, it's always sort of, yeah, it's not very easy to do, right? If you want to move somewhere else, then I couldn't really do that, or I couldn't get paid out of that certain country. All of these things, like I guess, like are quite difficult in this traditional setup. But with a token, it makes it so much easier for people to actually contribute out of any country, because they can just receive these tokens, be a freelancer themselves, and then they can sort of on their own, in their own country, in their own jurisdiction, they get to decide what to do with these tokens, how, what off ramp they have to use, how to declare taxes. Not, you know, I'm
Yeah,
not advocating
exactly.
here that they have
But
to be doing this illegally and just keeping the tokens, but they can then take that into their country and then worry about it. But for a company to pay you, let's say I was working for Singaporean company and they would want to pay me in Australia, for them, it'd be like a ton of things they have to set up to make that work even, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In this case, everyone's just aligned towards the goal, and then everyone just takes care of themselves and ensures that they legally are able to provide themselves with income or incentives, right?
Yeah.
But it's not up to the company in this case
Yeah.
to come up with something to leverage that global talent pool. That's the
Yeah.
amazing thing about this. In the past, it's like, oh, you want to work for this company? Okay, you might need to move, right? Move your whole family across
Yeah. Yeah.
continents,
Yeah.
put your kids into new schools. Maybe they need to learn a different language.
Yeah.
Nowadays, with this, um, yeah, a lot of that barrier of entry can be taken down, and I think it's really,
Yeah.
really exciting to see what might come up from it.
Yeah. It's like time zone is the only thing.
Yeah,
That's time zone is the limit.
but
Yeah,
we're making it work, right, Florian?
we are. Yeah, you're getting up early. Um, Thank you for that. Cool. So I guess, yeah, we talked about the ownership a lot, incentivizing members, this whole skin in the game piece, but then also marketing, right? Um, and
I love
yeah,
that when you brought that up. That was something I never thought about, but when you brought it up and I read through your piece, I was like, yeah, that's so true, right?
yeah. I mean, you you got to be careful in some degree. And we talked about this prior to starting the show about Ponzi schemes, but um, in a way, somebody who got in and has that token and believes in the community, he will of course go around and tell other people about it, right? But that's also what happens if I'm happy with the new AirPods, right? I'm really happy with these new AirPods. So I'm going to tell everybody about it. Um, I don't have ownership, but like, you get the point. Maybe it's a little bit similar to that. Um, but what it will like, it would just amplify it if you own the token, or if you have this ownership in something, you will tell others about it if you like it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be holding it, right? You'd be
Or you
you'd be
wouldn't
like,
be
this is a
working
terrible
on it,
business. Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah,
Even more like imagine going to Christmas dinner or whatever, having a birthday lunch, and people are saying, "Hey, what are you doing with your time? You know what's keeping
yeah,
you busy?" And if you go, "Oh, I'm doing this, and I get paid in these tokens," um, yeah, you're just like a natural ambassador for the project, right?
yeah,
But if you're not, if you just imagine that same person doing that same gig but getting paid in dollars
yeah,
or euros or whatever, he'll just say, "Oh yeah, I'm a writer. I write articles for this, you know, for
yeah, yeah,
this
yeah,
joint and that joint." Now they'd be like, "Dude, I'm part of this thing."
yeah,
It becomes part of a person's identity almost, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got this other one in here in this diagram that says community status. Um, I
Hmm.
guess that kind of fits into it. I thought about this, and um, it is kind of true that I saw this, like, this meme, and where I need to find it. You got to see it. Maybe I can link it in the show
Maybe
notes. But
Lovis can put it up.
yeah, maybe Lois can bring this onto the screen. But the thing was kind of like that people were actually even quite interested just in these Discord roles. Like, if you're on a Discord, you hold a certain amount of tokens, then you get a different role that gives
Hmm.
you just a different color of your name colored in the Discord. But people already think that's quite valuable or cool to have. Just we love status as humans, I guess, and that's just part of what we are and what we do. So tokens, in a way, allow to reflect that. I'm the
I mean,
Chris Flyer
face.
Singapore Gold member, and I'm
Yeah,
terribly
yeah,
proud of
yeah.
that. And I put this
Or
onto
just
my
think
suitcase
about
whenever I travel.
Just think about like Facebook, right? Having that like button or the Instagram, everybody's liking stuff, right? Like,
Oh
how
yeah,
does that work and why? But hey, trillion dollar industry almost, right?
yeah,
Um, and in this case, it's more you'd be like, hey, instead of liking my post or liking my picture, you're looking at people's going, hey, I love your work, and how much more fulfilling would that be?
Yeah. And I'm even willing to expend capital to show you that I really support it, right? So I hold these tokens and I use that as like, oh, I'm a strong supporter of the Tokenomics DAO. I can show you I've got 100 tokens here, or
Yeah.
I'm like a mid-tier member or a gold member, or I don't know what. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a way to use it. You don't have to, but I think it's a way to use it. Yeah.
It's a
Um,
free option, maybe, let's say,
yeah.
that
Yeah.
comes with the whole system.
Yes.
If it works, it gives you that added tailwind. If it
Yeah.
doesn't, it doesn't hurt you in any way. You're not paying for it.
Yeah. 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 Um, okay. So then I guess we have like governance left.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, there's been debates about doing governance with tokens or not. But the main argument was that tokens can be bought by people's, or votes could be bought this way, and reputation based systems would be better. And I think there's some truth to that, and it will be all figured out. But in a very basic way, using these tokens to vote is, yeah, is a pretty cool thing. You could vote on governance decisions, and that's all part of this like decentralized ethos, and is something that that a token could be used for, and also is something. And I'd love to get on that, get onto this topic later. Is like it somehow gives it value, right? If you have these tokens and you can decide where the tokenomics DAO is heading, or where this DAO you're working for is heading, then that is very valuable, right? It's a good functionality of a token.
Mm. Yeah, that
You have that say,
incentive
right?
is incentives again, but this time it's like directing in real time, right? When we talked about incentives earlier, it's like it was more to do with how to incentivize a group of people to work towards a certain goal.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have that governance aspect is how do you maybe tweak that goal, right? Like how do you steer the ship a little bit while the
Yeah, yeah,
ship's
yeah,
on course, right?
yeah.
And I
It gives
think
you this.
that's
If you can't, if to your example, if you said like you can't support the DAO or the team to get from B to C, and if you involve governance in that, it might get you to say like, maybe we should change this and not go from B to C, but go from B to C.1 and
mm,
do this slightly different thing. And the
mhm,
the the method of governance gives you a say in it, and won't only give the the CEO of the DAO or whoever that might be, give them the say, right? It just gives everybody a say in that, and then
mm.
you sort of have this democracy consensus approach.
It's crazy. It's like a direct democracy that at the same time gets everybody on board, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's what it would do. You have to be like open for it, because direct democracy also involves that people have to get more involved in stuff, and most
And
people
be
don't want
educated.
to, and be educated. Yeah, but I'd love to
Yeah.
have a direct democracy. There's a lot of things I'd love to have a say on,
Mm.
which in most modern democracies you can't. you can
Yeah,
vote
yeah.
you can vote the representative, but he has incentives aligned in different ways often, right?
Yeah, different agent principle again, right?
Yeah, yeah,
We have
exactly.
no idea how much whoever is in that leadership position, where along that scale they might sit.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Who pays them? Where
Yeah,
they have their equity in. Yeah.
yeah.
So, okay. So then we have the coordination. I wasn't sure if this really fits into a benefit, or if it's really different than representing ownership, but I thought it'd be still good to mention it, because it's like this natural thing that it does, a token. It helps to coordinate along like towards that same goal through
Hmm.
ownership, obviously, but it kind of does that, right?
But maybe it's even multi-aspect, right? Because it could be through ownership, it could be through governance.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like coordination is kind of, yeah, all of them might contribute to coordination. all of
It's
the
crazy. This is when you think about it, these different circles you have there, a lot of them also can affect each other, right? Like,
yeah.
let's say, market valuation goes through the roof. That would also put a dynamic on all the other aspects that you have here listed. Straight away that incentives how much it would affect how
Oh
people
yeah, yeah.
think about their position in that.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm now a millionaire.
Yeah. And then tomorrow you only have
What
like
does that mean?
10,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You'd question all the other stuff. Yeah. Do I want to be an owner in this? So
yeah.
that's maybe one of the, and I kind of skipped that section when we talked about the not so good things about
The
tokens,
downsides, right?
the
The
downsides.
volatility.
Yeah. But that's it.
Yeah.
It's the volatility. It's like the so I quoted this Australian Shareholders Association. They basically said, well, if you trade the equity on in a market, and it's like the obvious thing, right? It's volatile and you might lose your money, right? It might go down. You might put in
Mm.
100,000 and then something happens and the thing goes down to 1,000. So you lost a lot of money in it. And that might get you to question all of these other things, right? You might question, my community said, is it actually worth that much? Do I want to have a say if it's not worth anything anymore? Um, so yeah, of course, that's a downside. You're out there. You have this market, this constant market evaluation every single day, and Web3 and crypto is so volatile. So it's yeah, can be nerve wracking and influencing certainly a lot of this.
So I would say that that volatility would affect you if you were, let's say, still closer to the agent side of things than the principal side of things. So
Yeah,
even though say you're Elon Musk, right? And Tesla goes from 100 to 1,000 and then back to 400 again. And 99% of your net worth is tied into that stock. You actually I would say you actually don't really mark to market your valuations every week, every month, every day. If
yeah,
not, you
yeah,
go crazy, right? Your job
yeah,
is you're single-minded. You go, hey, I want to make sure 20% of the cars on the road are mine. I want to make sure we get to Mars, whatever it is, right? You don't have time to be looking at your balance, at
yeah.
your how high up the
Short term
billionaire list
stuff.
you are. Yeah.
Yeah,
But if you were, say, holding 30 different tokens and one token, let's say, suddenly moons and gets you to, it becomes 50% of your net worth, you then become a lot more worried about what that token's financial performance is going to be,
yeah.
right?
It's gonna go on like this. Yeah, yeah. Because you might be
So,
more short term
correct. Yeah.
thinking about this. Yeah, that's maybe
And
another cool.
most
Yeah,
most people in traditional entities, they if they start something, it's usually 10 years or so before they even can think of selling it, right?
yeah,
So they're not really doing this mark to market stuff, going on an exchange and saying, hey, how much is my startup worth?
yeah, yeah. Because they believe in this long term vision behind it, right? That's um.
Mhm.
But yeah, maybe that's like a whole different thing we should explore as part of this journey. Is like how does that market valuation impact people on this spectrum that I had here, right? This principal to agent, how does that impact them? Like if
Yeah,
the tokens go up, is the principal more impacted or the agent more impacted, and how so? Yeah, maybe we can do a deeper dive into that. I
I
think that'd be cool.
I would say, right, if you think of volatility as putting a bunch, like if you can imagine a bucket full of different sized rocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're all randomly placed in this bucket. And I think volatility is like this energy you have that you're shaking the bucket, right? And
Yeah,
slowly but surely, after thousands of shakes, you see the rocks start to get aligned according to their size or whatever, what have you, right? And I
yeah,
think with volatility, you might actually see the principle, the people that start to hold on to the tokens over the long term, they're the strong hands, right?
Yeah.
And you might see that as as time passes and volatility goes through different cycles, you might see that more and more of these people that are holding these tokens after time X, you know, they're principle minded. It's no longer, it doesn't matter anymore. You know,
Yeah.
Bitcoin,
Yeah.
I believe,
Yeah.
let's say I totally believe in Bitcoin. Okay, so I bought it at 10 cents. Okay, it's just gone from 60,000 to 30,000. Do I care? Maybe if I've held it through that whole cycle, you don't care that much anymore, right? It's
Yeah.
just no, it's just a way of being. I'm a Bitcoiner, maximalist, or whatever, right?
Yeah. But that's because, like, I mean, you've profited so much along the way. But like, what if the market is just volatile and then after 2 years you're not much better in your position, right? What does that do?
Yeah, and then if you don't believe in the project anymore, you'd probably sell out, and the
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
that buys from you would be probably
He
somebody
believes.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
why else would you buy something that just crashed 90%, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's the
So then you
market.
have
Yeah.
that movement of the token ownership towards people that believe in the project
Yeah.
more.
True.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and this hypothesis, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing again.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but it does make sense to some degree. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So maybe let's now we've talked about the benefits of a token, right? So
Hmm?
my obvious next question in creating, or I'm still writing this article, so it's kind of like um it's all still in the making. It was like, how does the token then, from all of that, how does it accrue value? How does it really capture that value? So let's say the token has all these benefits and it helps us to create value, but how does it capture it? And
Hmm.
I found something. So I've created this diagram, and it's kind of, it's a different way. It has like token value in the middle, and it has all these little bubbles or circles around it that then point towards the token value. So all these different bubbles outside that somehow, in a way, maybe like increase the token value or capture it in the token, right? So that we actually get to this place where you might have not a zero sum game, but we have like a positive sum game, because we're adding to this thing, and by doing so we increase the value of the whole thing. And some thoughts were, we have generally just like the value of the DAO and the project. And if, like, let's say our tokenomics DAO has a token and our tokenomics DAO has some value. Now it's hard to put like to quantify that value, but like, let's say our token or our community grew from 100 people to 1,000 people, right? There's some value increase in that. I mean, if all we've done, we've brought together 1,000 people that have read through the end of my article and found it useful enough to click on that link to join a community, that's like this amazing filter of people. It's not just any person, it's a person that has read or scrolled through the end of a tokenomics article and found it interesting enough to click on the link and join the community, right? So all these people that are in there, we the at a minimum, what that did is just brought them together. And just bringing these people together allows them to communicate. And they wouldn't have been able to do that before. I mean, they would have been able to do that because they could find each other on the internet, but not in this group, right? So it's just like creating this group has some value. And that might be reflected in that token, right? And also the articles that we've created, this podcast, I hope it adds some value as well. Videos, just like the exchange of knowledge that is going on in this community, that's like the next thing I think also creates value to the project, and will somehow also contribute to value of a token. That's at least my thinking.
Yeah, you have that network effect, and the
Yeah, yeah,
more every single person joining um, let's say the system increases the value and leverages off every other person that's already there.
yeah,
And if you mentioned going from 100 people to 1,000, that increase in value is definitely more than 10x, you know,
yeah.
because when you
There's
have
this
a
Metcalfe's
community
law.
of
Yeah,
Yeah, and you get a community of what's that, like 3 people, 2 people, you've got 2 relationships, 3 people, you've got 6,
Yeah.
right? 4 people, you've got 24.
Exponential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and that just means in a free, let's say a free self-organizing system, where with efficient means of leveraging off different talents and energy and knowledge pools, right? Definitely increases its value.
Yeah.
The system's value definitely increases as people join it.
Yeah. 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 And then, yeah, I guess like then also this expectation of value is also something, right? So, and then again, I talked about this in the last episode about bankless DAO, right? So if they've in season 2, they've created all these amazing things. They had this NFT campaign. They've launched a whole consulting arm. They have this editing and publishing thing. They're published for clients and write articles for them. They've got all this. So what might they produce in season 3? What might they produce in season 4? There's like certainly I've got high hopes that they will continue to be great and produce great stuff. And so I've got this expectation that what they create is going to get even better. So that's kind of something I think that also goes into the value of the token. I mean, that's how stocks are valued, right? It's like this expectation of future cash flows or future value, maybe that so the market always is forward looking, kind of priced into that, right? So I think like this is also something that adds to the value of a token, what the market
Mm.
expects or what people expect to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I guess then I have like ownership. Um, that's just this like governance, right? I said it earlier. If you own the token, if you have ownership, the token is valuable to you because you have a say in how the project uses their funds, their resources, and how it does stuff, the direction it's going to take. So that's something that's valuable, right? So somebody could come into the tokenomics DAO and just buy tokens for that purpose, and they will hold them and think the tokens are very valuable because they can decide maybe what type of articles we're going to publish or what we're going to talk about in the podcast, or not sure if we're going to break governance down to that level, but potentially that could be something that is valuable to people holding the token, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, I guess like the last 3 things in this little diagrams um are these. Now you've created this great community. I think I need to shut the window. um Sorry, should have done that before. So you created this value in the community, and I guess now with separate mechanisms, you can like make it worth for people to hold tokens. That's kind of the thought process that I'm trying to get at, right? So you have all this value in this thing, and that just having that value, having that great community, having all that doesn't really increase the price. I don't want to like I really want to distinguish price and value here, but holding these just holding these tokens, if it just gives you ownership, yeah, might be cool. But what if it also, if you would stake the token, it would also give you access to the value that was generated, right? So maybe you could uh, take some of these tokens and stake them with the tokenomics DAO, meaning staking, you commit them to it so that you can't immediately sell them. Maybe to also lock them up for a certain amount of time, and that would give you access to special resources. Maybe it would give you access to certain channels where yeah, you could ask questions, right? We were talking about this the other day with Lovis about
Mm.
launching an education series, right? And if we had an education series, maybe um, staking some tokens or staking an NFT or having an NFT of having joined an education course would give you access to a special channel where specialists in certain fields would be there for you to answer questions that you have in a timely manner, like maybe within 10 hours. So that would be make a token very valuable to hold. Um, I guess then also if you start thinking about a fee on value, on that value, right? So you think about like maybe burning tokens. So I read this article recently, and a lot of, I mean, corporations do it as well. they would buy back shares.
Mm-hmm.
And buying back shares doesn't really burn them, of course. It just keeps them on the balance sheet of the corporation. But of course, this can't sell them to themselves. So they're sort of taken out of circulation. And with that,
Mm-hmm.
improves certain metrics like the earnings per share, because if there's fewer shares, then the earnings per share will increase. And so ideally, the supply of tokens, or the supply of shares, and same goes for tokens, would be reduced on the market, and so the value of the holders would then go up. So these are kind of like mechanisms, I guess, um, that you could do with this sort of a fee on value. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Or you maybe also, like, if you had earnings coming in from somewhere, or revenues, you could distribute them to the holders of tokens, right? So if you charge
Mm.
on certain things that you do, that could be distributed back to the community and make it worth holding a token. And same for, I guess the last
And
point is this. Yeah, sorry, you go.
no, and it also then increases that expected value of the DAO project from a forward-looking perspective,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So virtuous cycle gets set up.
yeah, 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 totally. Yes, and then I mean, what it also could do, it could like reduce the fee for holders. So let's say you hold a certain amount of tokens, you have a gold membership, that would give you a higher discount on using the services, on running this thing and using it, and all that. So yeah, I think that's kind of what my thought process was in like capturing tokens. And I'd really be interested to hear some feedback maybe from the community once we have this uploaded and posted, um, and like some discussions on that, if there's anything that I'm missing or anything that we could add,
Hmm.
uh, to make it more clear.
Yeah, it'll be
And
exciting to hear feedback on what we've been discussing because we
yeah,
might be missing something or might be getting something wrong. And
yeah,
also, like, we'd love to hear more on why tokens might pose downsides and how we could mitigate against those things. Because I think we've gone through quite a few points as to why tokens are elegant and they have so many advantages, right? So
yeah,
if there are disadvantages, what might be good ways to get around those disadvantages so that we can still leverage the upside and minimize that downside?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm really keen. I hope, yeah, we get to a good discussion within the community on this thing. Um, yeah, maybe I just I just copied this into the article. I haven't used it in the actual article, but it was a quote from this guy, Julian Thievenard. He works for Fabric Ventures, and I was reading an article of him, and he had this in there. It was this like um yeah, this kind of marketing theme, and I really liked it. That's why maybe I could just read it out. It was, imagine if you received equity in YouTube per 1,000 views your video generated in 2007. Even if the equity was worth only a few dollars at a time, would you have ever uploaded a video elsewhere or promoted a competitor? So that's kind of this, like,
So
if they
good.
would have been able
So true.
to use this, right, this
Yeah.
mechanism, I think it would have made the whole thing even better. And now we have
Yeah.
that technology, and that's why I'm thinking, like, to me, I can't see a lot of things that speak against utilizing a token, because they
Mm.
are so powerful in this, right? And he goes on and says, like, imagine if every time you took or gave an Uber ride in 2012, you received some equity in the company. Assuming you're happy with Uber and the company keeps growing, would you have ever taken Lyft? What if you received equity for referring new customers on top of the usual cashback, right? So it's this whole ownership principle, and he kind of compares that to startups, or now bigger corporations, but to the time that there were startups. So if they would have utilized the token back then, you have all this like um, expected company growth, marketing, all these things that we talked about kind of go into that. And that's what, yeah, really makes me excited about this new technology, and that we can use it. And I think we should definitely try.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see what we find out along the way, right? We're good to come back and have this conversation in the future after we've been through
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah. No, we should. Cool, man. Do we have anything else, or do we want to wrap it up here?
no, I think we've said what we wanted to say and thought through the things we wanted to think through. Let's just wrap it up. But again, love to come back and hear, come back to this spot again in the future and see what we know given some time.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Cool. This was really this was a great conversation. Even though we walked through an article that I've kind of written, talking about it and getting into this like discussion mode, it often really helps you to even rethink your own stuff and brings up so many new ideas. So I've got a few new things that I can weave into this piece. So that was really
Mm.
helpful.
And when do you think this piece will be up? Do you
Maybe
know
like
yet?
in a week or so.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So we just published the first one. We're going to have a meeting in the community about defining the tokenomics of the Tokenomics DAO. It's in this channel. I'll link it in the show notes. And if you come to our Discord, I think Discord has this new feature called events. So if you click on events, you'll see what I've scheduled, and I've scheduled this tokenomics of the Tokenomics DAO working group on Thursday, March the 17th, 11 a.m. my time in Sydney, Australia. So you might need to convert that to your local time, but yeah, it'd be cool if people would join. Or if they can't, we'll record it, and then yeah, you guys can watch and we can have somewhat of an asynchronous conversation. Anyhow, cool. Hope you enjoyed this third episode, and yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Flo.
Bye bye.
Bye.